Hello, and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Golden Cage. Victor Mercer stared at his bank statement, his jaw clenched. Another month, another depleted account. As a biotech research scientist with a hefty salary, he should have been financially comfortable. Instead, he found himself counting pennies for lunch while his wife, Diana, splurged on her fifth designer handbag this month. "Diana, we need to talk," Victor said, finding his wife lounging by their pool in their upscale San Diego home. Diana Lowell Mercer, a former pharmaceutical sales representative who had quit her job 3 years into their marriage, barely looked up from her magazine. "About what?" she asked, her tone disinterested. "The finances. I checked our joint account. You withdrew $8,000 yesterday." Diana removed her sunglasses, her blue eyes narrowing. "Your point?" "My point? That's almost half my monthly take-home pay. Where did it go?" "I had expenses, Victor. Besides, what's yours is mine. Isn't that what you promised?" Her smile was honeyed, but held no warmth. "Or are you suddenly regretting our arrangement?" The arrangement had begun innocently enough. When they married 7 years ago, Diana had suggested combining their finances, which seemed reasonable. She'd offered to manage their money since Victor was often absorbed in his research. Gradually, she'd taken complete control of his paychecks, doling out an allowance that barely covered his basic needs. "I'm not regretting our marriage," Victor said carefully, "but I think we need more transparency. I'd like access to our investment accounts." Diana's laugh was brittle. "Oh, Victor, you're brilliant with your test tubes, but you'd be lost managing real money. Trust me, I'm taking care of everything." Later that evening, Victor received a call from his mother. "Victor, your father and I are concerned," Ellen Mercer began. "Diana called us. She says you're becoming paranoid about money." Victor pinched the bridge of his nose. "Mom, she's controlling all my earnings. I just asked to see our accounts." "Son," his father Robert's stern voice came on the line. "Diana's been nothing but devoted to you. Remember how she stuck by you during that plagiarism accusation at your old lab? You've always been intense. Maybe you're working too hard again." The mention of the plagiarism incident, where Victor had been falsely accused and later exonerated, stung. His parents had initially doubted his innocence, just as Diana had seemed to. Only Victor's former colleague Noah Fleming had stood by him, helping prove someone else had stolen Victor's research. "I'm not working too hard," Victor replied evenly. "I'm trying to understand where my money is going." His mother sighed. "Diana mentioned you've been forgetting things, too. Missing appointments. Maybe you should see Dr. Winters again." Dr. Winters, the psychiatrist Victor had seen briefly after the plagiarism stress. A chill ran down his spine. Why would Diana bring that up now? After hanging up, Victor sat in his home office, thinking. His parents had always favored Diana, viewing her as the stable counterpart to their difficult son. But this felt different, more coordinated. That night, Victor pretended to take the sleeping pill Diana had begun helpfully providing each evening. Once she was asleep, he slipped in her home office and tried accessing her computer. Locked. Her desk drawers, also locked. But underneath a stack of mail, he found a receipt from an attorney named Philip Vaughn, dated 3 days earlier. Victor photographed it with his phone, then carefully replaced everything. Something was very wrong, and he needed to figure out what before confronting Diana. The next day, he called Noah. "I need a favor," Victor said after explaining his concerns. "Can you recommend a good private investigator? Something's happening, and I need to know what I'm dealing with." Noah didn't hesitate. "I know someone discreet." "But Victor, if what you suspect is true, are you prepared for what you might discover?" Victor's voice hardened. "Whatever it is, I'd rather face it head-on than be blindsided." Little did he know how prophetic those words would be. Chapter 2. Paper Trails and Broken Vows. The private investigator, Brendan Russo, met Victor at a nondescript diner 15 miles from his home. Victor had been careful. He told Diana he was meeting with a potential research collaborator and made sure to arrive early to spot any familiar faces. "Your wife has been busy," Russo said, sliding a folder across the table after they had ordered coffee. "Very busy." The contents turned Victor's stomach. Bank statements showed Diana had been systematically moving funds from their joint accounts into private accounts under her maiden name. Over the past year alone, she diverted nearly $300,000. There's more, Russo continued. She's been seeing someone regularly. The photographs were unmistakable. Diana entering an upscale downtown apartment building. Diana at restaurants, her hand intertwined with a man's. Diana kissing the same man on a hotel balcony. His name is Adrian Walsh, financial advisor. They've been together at least 8 months, possibly longer. Victor stared at the man in the photos. Tall, polished, with the practiced smile of someone who charmed for a living. And my parents? You mentioned phone records. Frequent calls between your wife and both your parents. Increased significantly in the past 3 weeks. She also had multiple meetings with an attorney named Philip Vaughn. He specializes in competency hearings and conservatorship. The pieces clicked into place. The questions about his mental state. The forgetfulness Diana kept mentioning to others. The sudden concern from his parents about him working too hard. They're building a case to have me declared incompetent, Victor said flatly. Russo nodded. Based on what I've found, that's my assessment. The typical strategy is to claim the subject is mentally unstable, unable to manage their affairs, and potentially a danger to themselves. If successful, they'd control all your assets and decisions. Victor's mind raced through the implications. His research was nearing a breakthrough, a new delivery system for targeted cancer therapies. If his patent applications came through, the royalties would be substantial. What about this Walsh character? Any connection beyond the affair? That's where it gets interesting, Russo said, flipping to another page. Walsh previously worked at Helix Financial, where he managed portfolios for wealthy clients. He left under a cloud, rumors of account mismanagement, though nothing was proven. One of his former clients was Robert Mercer. My father, Victor whispered. Your father lost a significant amount with Walsh's firm, but apparently maintained the relationship. My guess. Walsh connected with your wife through your father, though whether the financial scheme or the affair came first is unclear. Victor sat back, processing this betrayal's multiple layers. His wife, his parents, and this financial predator, all conspiring to strip him of his autonomy and wealth. What's their timeline? Victor asked. Based on the legal filings I accessed, they've scheduled a competency hearing for next Friday. Judge Patricia Reynolds presiding. 9 days, Victor murmured. He met Russo's eyes. I need everything you've gathered, plus anything else you can find on Walsh. And I need a recommendation for the best attorney in town for this situation. Russo nodded. Already compiled. And for legal counsel, you want Veronica Sandoval. Former prosecutor turned defense attorney. Specializes in complex family cases with financial components. She's expensive but worth every penny. Money isn't an issue, Victor said grimly. Not yet, anyway. Later that day, Victor made 2 crucial moves. First, he withdrew $50,000 from a private research grant account only he could access, funds Diana knew nothing about. Second, he contacted Veronica Sandoval and arranged an immediate meeting. Sandoval's office was minimalist and intimidating, much like the woman herself. In her mid-50s with steel gray hair and penetrating dark eyes, she reviewed Victor's evidence in silence before speaking. They've made critical errors, she said finally. Conspiring to falsely have someone declare incompetent is illegal, but proving it requires irrefutable evidence and perfect timing. What do you recommend? Counterfiling immediately would alert them. Instead, we prepare thoroughly and reveal our hand only at the hearing. Meanwhile, you need to secure your most critical assets and research without raising suspicion. Victor leaned forward. I want more than just protection. When this is over, I want them to face consequences. Sandoval's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes sharpened. To what extent? Maximum legal damage, Victor replied. And perhaps beyond that, depending on what else we discover. Be careful what you wish for, Dr. Mercer. Revenge tends to consume the vengeful. Victor's smile was cold. I'm a researcher, Miss Sandoval. I understand controlled experiments and measure responses. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice and consequences. As Victor left Sandoval's office, his phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Where are you? Your mother's been trying to reach you. We're worried. The performance had begun. Chapter 3. The trap is set. Victor maintained a perfect facade. For the next 7 days, he played the role of the oblivious husband, pretending not to notice Diana's whispered phone calls or the way she documented his every unusual behavior in a small notebook she thought he hadn't discovered. Meanwhile, he executed his countermeasures with surgical precision. First, he secured his research. Victor transferred all his critical data to encrypted drives and sent copies to a trusted colleague abroad. He also filed accelerated patent applications through a separate attorney, ensuring his intellectual property was protected regardless of the hearing's outcome. Second, he gathered evidence. Small cameras installed in their home captured Diana's conversations about the plot. A recording device in his own home office documented her searching his computer while he was at work. Most damning was the audio of Diana coaching his parents on what to say at the hearing. Remember to mention how he accused colleagues of stealing his work. Diana's voice instructed Victor's father during one recorded call. And Mom emphasized his mood swings, how he seems paranoid one day and manic the next. Are you sure this is necessary, Diana? Ellen Mercer had asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. Declaring our own son incompetent seems extreme. It's for his own good, Diana insisted. Victor's brilliant but unstable. And honestly, with the value of his upcoming patents, we can't risk him making irrational decisions. This way, we protect him and his assets. And the financial advisor you mentioned, Walsh, he'll help manage everything afterward? Robert Mercer asked. Adrian has excellent investment strategies. He'll triple Victor's patent royalties within 5 years, and we'll all benefit. Third, Victor investigated deeper. Brendan Russo uncovered that Walsh had been orchestrating similar schemes with at least 2 other wealthy clients, working with different female accomplices each time. In one case, a tech entrepreneur had been institutionalized for 6 months before relatives discovered the fraud. The morning of the hearing, Victor awoke to find Diana sitting on the edge of their bed, her expression concerned. Victor, honey, I need you to stay calm today, she said, placing her hand on his. Your parents and I have arranged a meeting with Judge Reynolds. It's just a welfare check, nothing to worry about. A welfare check? Victor repeated, feigning confusion. Yes, darling, we're concerned about you. The forgetfulness, the accusations about money, it's not like you. Her eyes welled with practiced tears. We just want to make sure you're okay. Victor nodded slowly. I see. Well, if you're all so concerned, of course I'll come. Diana's relief was palpable and revealing. She'd expected resistance, perhaps even an outburst she could document as further evidence of his instability. I'll lay out your blue suit, she said, standing up. Judge Reynolds is a friend of Adrian Walsh. You remember Adrian from my charity committee? They're both on the hospital board. Another piece of the puzzle. The judge had a connection to Walsh. Victor texted this information to Sandoval as soon as Diana left the room. The response came immediately, already aware. Adds to our motion for recusal. Follow the plan exactly. At the courthouse, Victor was surprised to see Noah Fleming waiting in the parking lot. What are you doing here? Victor asked as Noah approached. Veronica Sandoval called me. Said you might need moral support. Noah's expression was grim. Is it true? Diana and your parents? Victor nodded. And worse than you think. But it ends today. Inside, Diana led Victor to a conference room where his parents waited with a polished man in an expensive suit, undoubtedly Philip Vaughn, and another man Victor recognized from the photographs as Adrian Walsh. Victor, Robert Mercer stood, his expression a mask of paternal concern. We're here because we love you, son. Ellen Mercer dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. This intervention is long overdue. Your behavior has become so erratic. Intervention? Victor raised an eyebrow. I thought Diana called this a welfare check. An uncomfortable silence fell. Diana recovered first. It's both, darling. We're checking on your welfare through an intervention. Adrian Walsh stepped forward, extending his hand. Victor, I'm Adrian Walsh. I've been consulting with your family about the best approach to helping you. Victor ignored the outstretched hand. And what expertise do you have in mental health, Mr. Walsh? Walsh faltered slightly. I'm a financial advisor. My concern is protecting your assets while you recover. I see. Victor checked his watch. What time is Judge Reynolds joining us? Philip Vaughn cleared his throat. The judge will see us in her chambers at 11. We're filing a petition for temporary conservatorship, with your wife as conservator and your parents as backup conservators. Victor nodded calmly. And who's representing my interests in this petition? The question seemed to catch them off guard. Vaughn recovered first. As this is an emergency petition based on incapacity, you haven't been assigned counsel yet. But rest assured, the court will appoint someone appropriate afterward. How convenient, Victor remarked. Diana moved to his side, taking his arm. Victor, please don't be difficult. We're trying to help you. When exactly did my alleged incapacity begin, Diana? Before or after you started sleeping with Mr. Walsh here? The room went deadly silent. Robert Mercer's face flushed red while Ellen gasped. Diana's fingers dug into Victor's arm. That's exactly the kind of paranoid accusation we're concerned about, Vaughn interjected smoothly. These delusions, are they delusions? Victor asked, pulling out his phone. Because I have quite a collection of photos suggesting otherwise. Would you like to see them, Dad? Mom? There's a particularly interesting one from the Bayshore Hotel last Thursday. Diana's face had gone pale. Victor, you're not well. This is... The door opened, and a court officer appeared. Judge Reynolds is ready for you now. As they gathered their things, Victor leaned close to Diana and whispered, You should have been more careful about who you trusted, Diana. Much more careful. For the first time, genuine fear flickered in her eyes as they walked toward the judge's chambers, where everything was about to change. Chapter 4. Tables Turned. Judge Patricia Reynolds' chambers were imposing. Dark wood paneling, law books lining the walls, and an American flag standing beside her massive desk. The judge herself, a severe-looking woman in her 60s with immaculately styled silver hair, barely looked up from her papers as they entered. Competency hearing in the matter of Victor Mercer, she announced. I understand this is an emergency petition filed by Diana Mercer, with supporting statements from Robert and Ellen Mercer. That's correct, Your Honor, Philip Vaughn confirmed. We have substantial documentation of Dr. Mercer's declining mental state and erratic behavior. Judge Reynolds peered over her reading glasses. And Dr. Mercer is present without counsel? Before Vaughn could answer, the door opened again. Veronica Sandoval strode in, followed by Brendan Russo and two court officers carrying boxes of documents. Veronica Sandoval, representing Dr. Victor Mercer, she announced, placing a thick folder on the judge's desk. And I'm filing an immediate motion to dismiss this petition on grounds of fraud upon the court, conspiracy to commit financial exploitation, and judicial recusal due to conflict of interest. Judge Reynolds' eyebrows shot up. Ms. Sandoval, this is highly irregular. This was scheduled as an uncontested competency hearing. There's nothing regular about this case, Your Honor, Sandoval replied. And nothing about it is uncontested. If I may. When the judge nodded cautiously, Sandoval continued. First, we move for your recusal based on your relationship with Adrian Walsh, who is not only the paramour of the petitioner, but stands to gain financially from controlling Dr. Mercer's assets. Diana gasped audibly. Adrian Walsh stood rigid, while Philip Vaughn began furiously scribbling notes. Judge Reynolds' face had gone pale. That's a serious allegation, counselor. Which we can substantiate, Sandoval replied, nodding to one of the court officers, who handed her a document. This is a photograph from the Westlake Country Club Charity Gala 3 months ago, showing Your Honor, Mr. Walsh, and, coincidentally, Mrs. Mercer deep in conversation. Our filing includes bank records showing a $50,000 donation from an LLC controlled by Mr. Walsh to Your Honor's re-election campaign 2 weeks later. The judge's lips pressed into a thin line. I attend numerous fundraisers, Ms. Sandoval. Of course, Your Honor. However, the appearance of impropriety is sufficient grounds for recusal. But more importantly, We have evidence that this entire petition is fraudulent. Sandoval signaled, and Brendan Russo stepped forward with a laptop. With the court's permission, we'd like to play several recordings that demonstrate a conspiracy between Diana Mercer, Adrian Walsh, and the elder Mercers to falsely have Dr. Victor Mercer declared incompetent for financial gain. Robert Mercer surged to his feet. This is outrageous. We're trying to help our son. By conspiring to steal his money and research patents? Victor asked quietly. That's an interesting definition of help, Dad. Philip Vaughn raised his hand. Your Honor, any recordings made without consent would be inadmissible under California's two-party consent law. Normally, you'd be correct, Sandoval replied. However, these recordings fall under the exception for gathering evidence of felony fraud. Furthermore, several were made in public places where there's no expectation of privacy. Judge Reynolds looked increasingly uncomfortable. I think, given these allegations, this matter should be transferred to another judge. We anticipated that, Your Honor, Sandoval said. We've already filed a comprehensive brief with presiding Judge Morris, who has assigned Judge William Hargrove to hear this matter immediately. He's waiting in courtroom 3C. Diana turned to Victor, her composure cracking. Victor, please. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly, Victor replied, his voice low. You, Walsh, and my parents plotted to have me declared incompetent so that you could control my assets and upcoming patent royalties. You've been systematically gaslighting me, stealing from me, and betraying me in every possible way. Adrian Walsh stepped forward. Dr. Mercer, there's been a misunderstanding. I was simply providing financial advice. Save it for Judge Hargrove. Victor cut him off. I'm particularly interested in how you'll explain your previous clients who mysteriously lost capacity shortly after meeting you, like Thomas Bergman or Elizabeth Winters. Walsh's face went ashen at the mention of those names. 20 minutes later, they reassembled in courtroom 3C. Judge William Hargrove, a barrel-chested black man with a reputation for zero tolerance for courtroom games, listened impassively as Sandoval laid out their evidence. The recordings were damning. Diana's voice, crystal clear, discussing how to manufacture evidence of Victor's instability. Adrian Walsh explaining how they'd manage Victor's assets once he was declared incompetent. Robert Mercer expressing concern about the ethics, but ultimately agreeing after Walsh mentioned tripling returns. As the final recording played, Diana and Walsh in bed, laughing about how Victor would be comfortably managed in a private facility while they enjoyed his money. Diana buried her face in her hands. Your Honor, Sandoval concluded, we're not only asking for dismissal of the incompetency petition, but also filing counterclaims for conspiracy, fraud, emotional distress, and theft. Additionally, we've provided this evidence to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. Judge Hargrove turned to Philip Vaughn. Counselor, do you wish to respond? Vaughn stood, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Your Honor, in light of this evidence, my clients may wish to reconsider their petition. Perhaps a brief recess. Not so fast. Judge Hargrove interrupted. This court takes allegations of abuse of the competency process extremely seriously. I'm dismissing the petition with prejudice and issuing temporary restraining orders against Diana Mercer, Adrian Walsh, Robert Mercer, and Ella Mercer, barring them from contact with Dr. Victor Mercer or access to any of his financial accounts. He turned to Victor. Dr. Mercer, are you currently residing in the same household as your wife? Yes, Your Honor. That arrangement needs to change immediately. Ms. Sandoval, I'm ordering that Mrs. Mercer vacate the shared residence within 24 hours. Dr. Mercer may return with a police escort to ensure compliance. Diana finally found her voice. But where am I supposed to go? That's my home. Judge Hargrove fixed her with a stern gaze. Mrs. Mercer, based on the evidence presented, you've been engaged in a scheme that could have resulted in your husband's false imprisonment in a psychiatric facility while you depleted his assets. Consider yourself fortunate that you're simply being ordered to find alternative housing rather than facing immediate criminal charges. He addressed the entire courtroom. This matter is referred to the district attorney for potential prosecution. All of Dr. Mercer's financial accounts are to be frozen except for his personal access. A full forensic accounting will determine what funds have been misappropriated. As the judge stood to leave, Victor caught Diana's eye. Her expression shifted from shock to calculation to something like pleading. Victor simply turned away. Outside the courtroom, Noah clasped Victor's shoulder. "You okay?" Victor watched as Diana huddled with Walsh and his parents, all of them shooting worried glances his way. "I'm better than okay," Victor replied. "But this is just the beginning." Chapter 5. The Architect of Ruin. 2 weeks after the court hearing, Victor sat in Veronica Sandoval's office, reviewing their strategy. The initial victory had been satisfying but incomplete. Diana had vacated their home, taking several valuable items despite the court order, and his parents had retreated to their lakeside cabin, all communication now routed through attorneys. Adrian Walsh, however, had disappeared completely. The district attorney is pursuing charges against Diana for financial exploitation and conspiracy, Sandoval explained. Your parents will likely face lesser charges as accessories, though their attorneys are positioning them as unwitting participants manipulated by Walsh. And Walsh himself? Sandoval frowned. That's where it gets complicated. The FBI has taken interest based on similar patterns with his other clients. They believe he's operating a sophisticated elder fraud ring, but he's vanished. Accounts emptied, apartment vacated, even his luxury car abandoned at the airport. Victor leaned back in his chair. He won't stay hidden for long. What makes you so confident? Because I know where he keeps his real money, Victor replied. The accounts he emptied were just for show. His actual wealth is tied up in cryptocurrency and offshore accounts. Information I acquired during our investigation. Sandoval looked alarmed. Victor, if you have information pertinent to a federal investigation, I've shared everything relevant with the FBI, Victor assured her. But some details I've kept in reserve. Insurance, you might say. Be careful, Sandoval warned. You've won the legal battle. Don't jeopardize that by pursuing personal vengeance. Victor smiled thinly. It's not vengeance, Veronica. It's justice. After leaving Sandoval's office, Victor met with Noah at a secure location, a private office Noah had rented under his company's name. Phase 1 is complete, Victor told him. The legal system has acknowledged their conspiracy and is pursuing conventional justice. Now we move to Phase 2. Noah looked concerned. Are you sure about this, Victor? You could walk away now, focus on your research. You've exposed them, cleared your name, protected your assets, and let them potentially plea bargain to minimal consequences? Victor shook his head. Diana might serve 6 months in a minimum security facility before resuming her life. My parents will probably get probation, claiming they were misled. And Walsh has a history of evading consequences altogether. What exactly are you planning? Noah asked. Justice tailored to each betrayal, Victor replied, opening his laptop to show a detailed flowchart. Diana took my trust and financial security. My parents chose her over their own son. Walsh orchestrated the entire scheme, pretending to care about vulnerable people while plotting to exploit them. And you're going to what? Become judge, jury, and executioner. Nothing so dramatic, Victor assured him, just ensuring that their punishments fit their crimes. Over the next month, Victor methodically executed his plan. First, he focused on his parents. As he'd predicted, they'd hired expensive attorneys who negotiated reduced charges in exchange for testimony against Diana and Walsh. Victor anonymously delivered comprehensive evidence packets to every member of his parents' social circle, their church congregation, and Robert's business partners. The packets contained court transcripts, recordings, and financial documentation proving their willing participation in the scheme against their son. Within weeks, they were socially ostracized. Robert's business partners initiated a forced buyout at a fraction of his stake's value, citing moral turpitude clauses. Their church asked them to step down from leadership positions. Neighbors avoided them. The court of public opinion proved far harsher than the legal system. For Diana, Victor employed a different approach. Her greatest fear had always been social humiliation and financial insecurity. Through carefully timed information releases to social media influencers in their circle, her affair and fraud attempt became trending gossip in their community. Simultaneously, Victor's attorney filed civil suits against her for financial recovery, placing liens on any future income or assets. He also ensured that her past educational fraud, she'd falsified portions of her pharmaceutical sales credentials, reached her former employer and industry contacts, effectively blacklisting her professionally. But Adrian Walsh remained Victor's primary target. The man had destroyed multiple lives with his schemes, and conventional justice had repeatedly failed to stop him. Working with Brendan Russo and specialized cybersecurity experts, Victor tracked Walsh's digital footprint to a small coastal town in Portugal. Using the cryptocurrency wallet addresses and offshore account details he'd uncovered, Victor implemented a sophisticated financial trap. He created what appeared to be another vulnerable, wealthy target, a fictional tech entrepreneur with deteriorating health, substantial assets, and no close family. The digital breadcrumbs led back to actual accounts Victor had established with enough funds to appear legitimate. When Walsh inevitably took the bait, accessing the accounts from his Portuguese hideout, it triggered two events: a complete trace of his location and actual accounts, and an automatic notification to Interpol and the FBI with comprehensive evidence of his crimes across multiple jurisdictions. "We've got him," Noah confirmed during a secure call. Portuguese authorities raided his villa this morning. They found evidence linking him to at least 12 similar schemes across 3 countries. He's being extradited to face charges in the U.S. Victor nodded, satisfied with this development, but not yet finished. And the accounts? As you predicted, he had over 20 million in hidden assets. The forensic accountants are having a field day. They're already identifying victims for restitution. "Good," Victor replied. "And the final piece?" Noah hesitated. "It's ready, but Victor, this crosses a line. The evidence packet you've compiled, the interviews with his previous victims, the psychological profile documenting his predatory methods. Publishing all this isn't just punitive. It's necessary," Victor finished firmly. "Every potential victim should recognize his methods. Every prosecutor should understand his patterns. Every judge should know his history of manipulating the system." The comprehensive dossier on Adrian Walsh was released to law enforcement agencies, victims' advocacy groups, and selected journalists the following day. Within a week, documentaries were being planned, additional victims were coming forward, and Walsh's carefully constructed persona was irreparably shattered. Victor watched the news coverage from his home office, feeling not joy but a cold satisfaction. Phase 2 was nearly complete. Justice, real justice, was being served. Chapter 6, Checkmate. 6 months after the failed competency hearing, Victor sat across from District Attorney Eleanor Martinez, reviewing the case status. "Walsh has accepted a plea deal," Martinez explained. 25 years without possibility of parole. Given his age, that's effectively a life sentence. "And the restitution?" Victor asked. "Over 18 million recovered so far, being distributed to his victims. Your financial forensics were instrumental. We'd never have traced those accounts without your team's work." Victor nodded. "And Diana?" Martinez consulted her notes. 7 years for financial exploitation, conspiracy, and perjury. Her cooperation against Walsh helped, but the recordings you provided left her little room to maneuver. "My parents. 3 years probation, community service, and financial restitution." Their attorneys argued successfully that they were manipulated by Walsh, though the judge made it clear he found their betrayal of their son particularly troubling. Victor absorbed this information silently. The legal system had functioned better than he'd expected, particularly with the overwhelming evidence he'd provided. But there remained loose ends, aspects of justice the courts couldn't address. After leaving the DA's office, Victor drove to a modest apartment complex on the city's outskirts. Diana had been released on bail, pending her appeal, relegated to wearing an ankle monitor and working at a convenience store, the only employment her now-tarnished reputation could secure. He watched from his car as she emerged, looking vastly different from the polished socialite who had shared his home. Her designer clothes had been replaced by discount store attire, her professionally styled hair now dull and self-trimmed. She walked with hunched shoulders, constantly glancing around as if expecting to be recognized or accosted. Victor didn't approach her. Seeing the consequences of her actions manifested so visibly was sufficient. Instead, he placed a call to Noah. "Is everything in place for tomorrow?" "Yes," Noah confirmed. "The Research Foundation announcement is scheduled for 10 a.m. All major scientific publications and pharmaceutical industry outlets will cover it." "And the board members?" "Confirmed. Dr. Eliza Winters is particularly excited to serve as chairperson, given her personal experience as one of Walsh's victims." The following morning, Victor stood at a podium in the university's conference center, addressing a room of journalists, scientists, and industry leaders. The Mercer Foundation for Scientific Integrity will fund research and advocacy at the intersection of scientific advancement and ethical oversight, he announced. "Our initial endowment of $50 million, derived from my recent pharmaceutical delivery system patents, will support scientists facing false accusations, fund integrity investigations, and provide legal assistance to researchers whose work is being exploited." He continued, "The foundation will also establish a specialized division focusing on financial exploitation of vulnerable individuals in scientific and medical communities. This division, headed by Dr. Eliza Winters, will work directly with law enforcement to identify and stop predatory schemes before they destroy lives and valuable research." The irony wasn't lost on those familiar with Victor's story. He had transformed his personal tragedy into a powerful force for prevention and protection. The very patents Diana and Walsh had conspired to control now funded an organization dedicated to stopping similar predators. As the event concluded, a reporter asked the question Victor had anticipated. "Dr. Mercer, given your personal experience with false accusations and exploitation, do you have any message for your former wife or parents?" Victor met the reporter's gaze steadily. "Justice isn't about revenge. It's about restoration and prevention. My message to anyone who betrays trust for financial gain is simple. Your actions have consequences beyond what you can imagine. And to those who might become victims, trust but verify. Always." Later that evening, as coverage of the foundation launch dominated scientific news channels, Victor received an unexpected email from his father. The subject line read simply, "Please read, Robert." After a moment's hesitation, Victor opened it. "Victor, words cannot undo what your mother and I did. We betrayed you in the worst possible way, choosing to believe lies about our own son. The pain and shame we feel is beyond expression. We don't ask for forgiveness. We don't deserve it. But we want you to know that we recognize the full horror of our actions. The foundation you've created from this tragedy shows a strength of character we failed to appreciate. If you ever wish to speak with us, we are here. If not, we understand completely. Dad." Victor read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Perhaps someday he would address his parents again, but that day had not yet arrived. Their consequences, social ostracism, financial loss, and the permanent fracture of their family, would continue, just as his own pain continued. That night, Victor stood on the balcony of his new home, overlooking the ocean. The cool evening breeze carried away the last wisps of anger he'd been harboring. In its place settled something cooler, clearer, a crystalline understanding that justice had been achieved not through courts alone, but through his own calculated actions. Diana, Walsh, and his parents had all received precisely calibrated consequences. The legal system had imposed its penalties, but Victor had ensured that justice extended beyond imprisonment or fines to touch the aspects of life each valued most: reputation, freedom, social standing, and future opportunity. He had not forgiven. He would not forget. But he had prevailed completely, transforming attempt to destroy him into fuel for a mission larger than himself. In the alchemy of his response, he had converted betrayal into purpose. Victor raised his glass to the distant horizon. "Checkmate," he whispered to the unhearing ocean. Chapter 7. Phoenix Rising. 1 year after founding the Mercer Foundation, Victor's life had transformed completely. His pharmaceutical delivery system patents had revolutionized cancer treatment protocols globally, bringing both enormous financial success and professional acclaim. The foundation had already assisted 7 scientists facing false accusations and uncovered 2 major research fraud schemes. On a personal level, however, Victor remained isolated. Despite encouragement from Noah and colleagues to move on, he maintained a rigorous focus on work, avoiding social entanglements. The betrayal had left scars not visible but deeply felt. That changed unexpectedly during a foundation fundraiser at the San Diego Natural History Museum. Victor was discussing research ethics with a group of pharmaceutical executives when he was approached by Dr. Lydia Reeves, a forensic accountant and financial crime specialist who had recently joined the foundation's advisory board. Your foundation's algorithms for detecting financial exploitation patterns are impressive, she said after introductions. But they're missing behavioral indicators that typically precede financial moves. Victor raised an eyebrow, such as isolating the target from support networks, creating artificial dependency, staged rescues from manufactured problems. Lydia's direct gaze held his. I analyzed the Walsh case files. He was textbook, but your algorithms would only have flagged him after financial movements began. You're suggesting preventative rather than reactive detection. She nodded. Exactly. I've developed behavioral pattern recognition systems for the FBI's Elder Fraud Division. With modifications, they could significantly enhance your foundation's protective capabilities. Their conversation extended well beyond the fundraiser, continuing over dinner at a nearby restaurant. Victor found himself both professionally intrigued and personally disarmed by Lydia's analytical mind and straightforward manner. You don't shy away from difficult topics, he observed as they discussed Walsh's methodology. Professional hazard, she replied with a slight smile. Forensic accounting teaches you to look unflinchingly at human nature's darker aspects. People reveal themselves through their financial decisions more honestly than through their words. Is that why you agreed to join our advisory board? Fascinating case studies. Lydia considered the question. Partially, but also because your foundation is addressing something personal to me. My grandfather was targeted by someone like Walsh. Unlike you, we couldn't stop it in time. This revelation created an unexpected connection. Over the following months, Victor and Lydia collaborated closely on enhancing the foundation's protective systems. Their professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship, built on shared purpose and mutual respect rather than the superficial attraction that had characterized his relationship with Diana. Meanwhile, consequences continued unfolding for those who had betrayed Victor. Diana's appeal had been denied, and she was serving her sentence at a medium-security women's facility. Recent reports indicated she had attempted to manipulate fellow inmates and staff with little success, her practice charm failing in an environment immune to such tactics. Adrian Walsh was faring no better in federal prison. His former victims had filed additional civil suits, ensuring that any assets he might have hidden remained beyond his reach. The comprehensive psychological profile Victor had published had become a case study in criminal justice programs, immortalizing Walsh as a textbook predator. Victor's parents had completed their community service requirements, but the social and financial consequences continued. Robert's former business was thriving under new leadership, having distanced itself completely from its founder. They had sold their home and relocated to a modest apartment in another state, starting over in their 70s with diminished resources and reputations. Victor maintained distant awareness of these developments without actively tracking them. His focus had shifted to building rather than punishing, to protecting potential victims rather than monitoring his victimizers. On the anniversary of the court hearing that had exposed the conspiracy, Noah invited Victor to dinner at his home. To new beginnings, Noah said, raising his glass once they were seated with their meals. The foundation is thriving, your research is changing lives, and you seem lighter. Victor acknowledged this with a nod. I found purpose in prevention. It's more satisfying than I expected. And Dr. Reeves? Noah asked with studied casualness. Victor gave him a sharp look. Lydia is a colleague and friend. who you've had dinner with 8 times in the past month, Noah pointed out. Just work discussions? Mostly, Victor admitted, but also comfortable. She understands boundaries and has no agenda beyond what's stated. That's rare. Have you told her everything? About what you did beyond the legal system? Victor shook his head. Not explicitly, but she's a forensic investigator who's reviewed all the case files. I suspect she's pieced together most of it. Noah studied his friend. You know, when this all began, I worried about what your pursuit of justice might do to you, how it might harden you. Instead, it's clarified something in you. Facing betrayal forces choices, Victor replied. You become either perpetually suspicious or selectively trusting with better verification systems. I chose the latter. Later that week, Victor invited Lydia to the Foundation's research facility. After showing her their latest detection algorithms, he led her to a secure conference room. There's something you should know, he said, activating the room's privacy protocols. About how Walsh was really caught. Lydia's expression remained neutral. You created a honeypot operation using fictional accounts as bait, tracked his access to identify his location, and simultaneously triggered notifications to international authorities. Victor blinked in surprise. You knew. I told you. People reveal themselves through financial patterns. The Walsh investigation file had gaps only someone with intimate knowledge of his methods and extraordinary resources could have filled. She met his gaze directly. The question isn't whether you orchestrated his capture, but why you're telling me now. Because trust requires transparency, Victor answered. And because I've come to value your perspective. On the ethics of vigilante justice, she asked, though without judgment in her tone. On whether justice achieved through unorthodox means diminishes its validity. Lydia considered this. Justice systems exist because collective, dispassionate judgment is generally more reliable than individual, emotionally driven retribution. But systems fail, sometimes by design, sometimes by exploitation. You're not answering the question. Because it's the wrong question, she replied. The real question is whether your actions were proportionate to the harm and focused on prevention rather than punishment. From what I've observed, you targeted accountability and protection of future victims, not personal vengeance. She leaned forward slightly. I don't judge you for ensuring Walsh couldn't escape again, Victor. The system had failed his previous victims. But I would be concerned if you couldn't distinguish between justice and revenge moving forward. And if I can make that distinction, Lydia smiled slightly. Then I'd be interested in continuing both our professional collaboration and our dinners that are mostly about work. For the first time in years, Victor felt something long dormant stir. Not the infatuation he'd once mistaken for love with Diana, but something steadier, based on mutual understanding and shared purpose. As they left the conference room, his phone buzzed with a notification. The Foundation's monitoring system had identified another potential predator using Walsh's methodologies, targeting vulnerable researchers at a Midwest university. Duty calls, he told Lydia, showing her the alert. She nodded. Let's stop this one before anyone gets hurt. Together, they headed toward the monitoring center, their shared commitment to prevention stronger than any desire for retribution. Victor had not forgiven those who betrayed him, nor would he ever welcome them back into his life. But he had transformed their betrayal into something powerful and protective, a legacy that would far outlast the pain they had caused. Chapter 8. The Final Reckoning. 3 years after establishing the Mercer Foundation, Victor found himself facing an unexpected dilemma. His relationship with Lydia had deepened into something substantial, based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine understanding. They had moved in together 6 months earlier, creating a home that felt secure in ways his marriage never had. The foundation had expanded internationally, with offices in 7 countries and a global reputation for both scientific integrity and financial protection. Its algorithms had prevented dozens of exploitation attempts and supported over 100 researchers facing false accusations or intellectual property theft. Yet despite this progress, the past refused to stay buried. On a cool autumn morning, Victor received a call from Noah that would force him to confront the unresolved aspects of his story. Adrian Walsh is dying, Noah said without preamble. Terminal pancreatic cancer. The federal prison system has moved him to their medical facility with an estimated 3 months to live. Victor absorbed this news silently. Walsh had served just 4 years of his 25-year sentence. He's requested to see you, Noah continued, supposedly to make amends before he dies. Unlikely, Victor replied. More probably a final manipulation attempt. That's my assessment too, Noah agreed. But there's more. Diana has also reached out through her attorney. She's eligible for parole next month and wants to apologize in person before her hearing. Victor felt a familiar coldness settle in his chest. Convenient timing. Very. Especially since she's hired a publicity firm specializing in redemption narratives for public figures. After ending the call, Victor stood on his balcony looking out at the ocean. The Foundation's success should have made these requests irrelevant. Mere footnotes in a story that had evolved far beyond personal betrayal. Yet their reemergence stirred something unresolved within him. That evening, he shared the developments with Lydia as they prepared dinner together. You don't owe either of them closure, she said after listening. Their desire for absolution isn't your responsibility. It's not about absolution, Victor replied, carefully slicing vegetables. It's about ensuring they can't rewrite the narrative for public consumption or parole boards. Lydia studied him. You're considering seeing them. On my terms, yes. He met her gaze. Not for forgiveness, but for finality. After thoughtful discussion, they developed a strategy. Victor would meet both Walsh and Diana, but with specific conditions and protections in place. The encounters would serve not as reconciliation opportunities, but as final confirmation that justice had been achieved. The federal medical facility where Walsh was confined resembled a hospital more than a prison, though security remained evident in the guarded entrances and monitored visiting areas. Victor was escorted to a private room where Walsh waited, handcuffed to his bed despite his visibly deteriorated condition. Once vibrant and commanding, Adrian Walsh had withered into a gaunt specter. His expensive suits replaced by standard-issue medical gowns, his once perfect appearance now marked by jaundiced skin and thinning hair. Dr. Mercer, Walsh greeted him, his voice weaker but still carrying that cultivated charm. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Curiosity, Victor replied, taking a seat across from the bed. About what possible amends you think you could make. Walsh attempted a smile that came across as a grimace. Direct as always. That's what makes you different from most marks. Forgive me, clients. You never fully trusted the performance. Is that why I'm here? For a professional assessment of why your scheme failed. No. Walsh shifted painfully. I'm dying, Victor. Whatever you believe about me, that part isn't manipulation. Before I go, I wanted to acknowledge worthy opposition when I encountered it. Victor's expression remained neutral. This isn't a chess match, Walsh. You try to have me institutionalized and steal everything I'd worked for. Yes, and you orchestrated my complete destruction in response. Walsh's eyes, though sunken, held a glint of their former calculation. Don't insult my intelligence by denying it. The honeypot operation was brilliantly executed, far beyond what federal authorities could have managed alone. You seem to be confusing justice with revenge. Are they so different? Walsh asked. We're more alike than you'd care to admit, Victor. Both methodical, both willing to circumvent conventional limitations to achieve our goals. Victor leaned forward slightly. Here's the fundamental difference, Walsh. You destroyed lives for personal gain. I stopped you from destroying more. Walsh studied him for a moment. Is that how you justify the systematic dismantling of my life beyond legal consequences? The psychological profile publication? The outreach to every previous victim? The forensic accounting that found accounts even I had forgotten? I don't need justification, Victor replied evenly. The world is safer with you exposed and contained. And your ex-wife? Your parents? Were those consequences also about public safety or personal retribution? Victor didn't answer immediately, considering the question seriously. Both, he finally acknowledged. They betrayed fundamental trust. The consequences they faced were proportionate to that betrayal. Walsh nodded slowly. Honest, at least. He coughed painfully before continuing. I didn't ask you here for forgiveness, Victor. I wanted to see the man who beat me in my own game. In another life, we might have been partners rather than adversaries. In no version of reality would I partner with someone who preys on vulnerable people, Victor stated. Perhaps not. Walsh's energy seemed to be fading. One last thing, though. Diana wasn't initially part of the plan. I recruited her after meeting her through your parents. She was enthusiastic about the opportunity. Victor stood. I'm aware of everyone's respective roles in the conspiracy, Walsh. Your deathbed revelations aren't revealing anything new. As he turned to leave, Walsh called after him. Does it feel as satisfying as you hoped? The revenge. Victor paused at the door. It wasn't about satisfaction. It was about ensuring you could never do this again. He looked back at the dying man. In that regard, it was entirely successful. 2 days later, Victor met Diana at a secure room in her minimum security prison. Unlike Walsh, whose deterioration had been driven by illness, Diana's transformation seemed calculated. She'd adopted a modest appearance, her prison uniform neat, her manner subdued yet earnest. Victor, she began when he sat across from her. Thank you for agreeing to see me. Let's be clear about why I'm here, Victor replied. Not for reconciliation or to support your parole application. Diana nodded, looking down briefly. I understand. I needed to tell you face to face that I recognize the harm I caused. The therapy program here has helped me understand my patterns of manipulation and entitlement. Convenient realizations before your parole hearing. She flinched slightly. I deserve that skepticism. But people can change, Victor. I'm not the same person who betrayed you. Interesting timing for this transformation, Victor observed. Your publicity firm suggested highlighting redemption for the parole board, I assume. Diana's practiced composure slipped momentarily. You know about that. I make it my business to stay informed about people who've tried to destroy me. She regrouped quickly. The publicity firm was poor judgment on my part. I've terminated that relationship. This isn't about public image. It's about accepting responsibility. Victor studied her carefully. The Diana he'd known would say exactly these things, hit exactly these notes of contrition, if it served her interests. But whether this was genuine remorse or skilled performance hardly mattered. Your parole hearing is your concern, not mine, he said finally. I have no intention of appearing or making statements either way. Relief flickered across her face before she controlled it. I understand. I just want you to know that regardless of the hearing outcome, I plan to make amends through actions. I've been helping other women here understand financial manipulation patterns, using my own story as a warning. Turning exploitation into education, Victor noted. Efficient. Diana met his gaze directly. I don't expect forgiveness, Victor. Some betrayals are too profound. But I hope someday you'll believe that people can genuinely change, even people who've hurt you unforgivably. Perhaps some can, Victor acknowledged. Time will tell if you're among them. As they concluded their meeting, Diana asked one final question. Are you happy now, Victor? Truly. The question seemed sincere, lacking the manipulative undertone he'd expected. I've built something meaningful from what you and Walsh tried to destroy, he answered. The Foundation protects people from schemes like yours and supports researchers facing the kind of accusations you plan to level against me. So yes, I've found purpose and connection. Diana nodded slowly. Good. Despite everything, I'm glad for that. Victor left the prison with a sense of completion rather than catharsis. Diana would likely receive parole. She was skilled at presenting the narrative required for each audience. Walsh would die in custody, his legacy forever defined by his predatory schemes rather than his carefully cultivated charm. Later that week, Victor received an unexpected letter postmarked from a small town in Oregon, his parents' current location. Unlike previous attempts at communication, which he disposed of unopened, this envelope contained something that caught his attention. A cashier's check for $175,000 and a single sheet of paper with his father's handwriting. Victor, this represents everything we have left. It cannot undo our betrayal, but perhaps it can help someone else through your foundation. We don't ask for acknowledgement or forgiveness. just that these funds might prevent another family's destruction. We will not contact you again. Robert and Ellen Mercer. Victor studied the check thoughtfully. The amount likely represented the sale of their remaining assets, a complete financial capitulation. After a moment's consideration, he contacted the foundation's financial director and arranged for the funds to be directed to a new initiative: educational programs helping families recognize and prevent predatory influence. We shared the letter with Lydia that evening. She asked, "Will you acknowledge it? Let them know you received it." Victor considered this. No, this isn't about reconciliation. It's their final accountability. They've accepted the permanent consequences of their choices. Lydia nodded. Closure doesn't always require forgiveness or reconnection. Exactly. Victor placed the letter in a folder containing all documentation related to the conspiracy. This chapter is finished. In his home office later that night, Victor archived the complete file: legal documents, investigation reports, financial records, and now this final letter, sealing it permanently. The foundation would continue its protective mission, but his personal involvement with those who had betrayed him was definitively concluded. He had not forgiven. He would never forget. But he had ensured justice was served in full measure and transformed betrayal into lasting protection for others. In this, he had found not just vengeance, but something ultimately more satisfying: meaningful resolution on his own terms. Chapter 9. Legacy of Steel. 5 years after the attempted competency hearing that had nearly destroyed him, Victor Mercer stood at the podium of the newly inaugurated Mercer Institute for Scientific Integrity and Financial Protection. The gleaming research and education facility represented the evolution of his foundation into a global force for prevention and protection. Today we launch not just a building, but a commitment. Victor addressed the assembled guests: scientists, financial crimes specialists, law enforcement officials, and supporters. A commitment that exploitation through legal manipulation will be recognized, exposed, and prevented. That brilliant minds will be protected from those who would use their vulnerability for personal gain. The audience included Noah, now the Institute's chief operating officer, and Lydia, who had become both Victor's wife and the Institute's director of financial forensics. Their partnership had deepened into a marriage built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine trust. Everything his relationship with Diana had lacked. As Victor concluded his remarks, he announced the Institute's newest initiative. Today, we're launching the Preventative Recognition Program, training law enforcement and social service agencies to identify vulnerability patterns before exploitation occurs. This program transforms hard-earned lessons into protection for potential victims. What he didn't mention was that this initiative was funded entirely by the final restitution from his parents and additional funds recovered from Walsh's hidden accounts. Poetic justice manifest in practical protection. Following the ceremony, Victor and Lydia hosted a private reception for key supporters and team members. During a quiet moment, Noah approached Victor with a newspaper clipping. "Thought you should see this," Noah said, handing over the article. Published yesterday. The obituary was brief. Adrian Walsh, 67, died Tuesday at Federal Medical Center, Rochester. Private cremation, no services at request of deceased. Victor folded the clipping without comment, sliding it into his pocket. Walsh had outlived doctors' predictions by nearly 2 years, though he had remained confined to the medical facility throughout. Also, Noah continued, Diana's autobiography is being published next month. Redemption Path, From Privilege to Prison to Purpose. Advanced copies have gone to reviewers. Victor raised an eyebrow. Have you read it? Portions. She portrays herself as a misguided woman manipulated by Walsh, who found enlightenment through consequences. She mentions you, but carefully acknowledges her wrongdoing without details that would trigger libel issues. And my parents? Presented as well-intentioned, but easily influenced by Walsh. She's crafted a narrative that accepts nominal responsibility while redistributing the actual blame. Victor nodded thoughtfully. As expected, has the Institute received her donation offer? Noah grimaced slightly. Yes, 10% of proceeds to the foundation, with requested publicity about her commitment to making amends. Decline politely, Victor instructed. The Institute doesn't accept funds from individuals directly involved in exploitation cases we've documented. Already done, Noah assured him, though her publisher called twice to negotiate. Later that evening, as Victor and Lydia walked along the beach near their home, he shared the updates about Walsh and Diana. Are you concerned about her book reshaping the narrative? Lydia asked. Victor shook his head. Her version of events is irrelevant. The court records, evidence, and outcomes speak for themselves. And your parents? Any recent contact? None since the donation letter 3 years ago, Victor replied, which is appropriate. Some betrayals permanently sever relationships, regardless of subsequent regret. Lydia took his hand as they walked. The Institute has become something remarkable, Victor. From personal betrayal to global protection, it's a legacy of immense value. Built on hard lessons, he acknowledged, but serving its purpose. That purpose had expanded beyond his initial vision. The Institute now maintained the world's most comprehensive database of financial exploitation methodologies, trained protection specialists globally, and provided direct intervention for vulnerable individuals. Its scientific integrity division had revolutionized how research disputes were evaluated and resolved, significantly reducing false accusations. 6 months later, Victor received an unexpected call from Brendan Russo, the private investigator who had helped expose the original conspiracy. Sorry to disturb you, Dr. Mercer, but there's a situation you should be aware of. Diana Mercer was found unconscious in her apartment last night. Apparent suicide attempt following her book's commercial failure and widespread criticism of her redemption narrative. Victor absorbed this information silently before asking. Her condition? Stable but serious. The hospital reports she left a note specifically mentioning you. Something about finally understanding the true consequences of betrayal couldn't be escaped through reinvention. I see, Victor replied. Please keep me informed of developments, but I won't be visiting or making statements. After ending the call, Victor shared the news with Lydia. Are you all right? She asked, studying his expression. Yes, he answered honestly. Diana's current situation is the natural conclusion of choices made years ago. My responsibility ended when justice was served. Some might consider reaching out an act of compassion, Lydia observed, not suggesting, but exploring his perspective. Compassion doesn't require re-engagement, Victor explained. The most respectful response is maintaining the boundaries established by her actions. She's receiving medical care and has a support system through her rehabilitation community. My presence would serve neither her recovery nor my principles. Lydia nodded her understanding. Boundaries are sometimes the truest form of resolution. In the weeks that followed, Victor continued the Institute's work without distraction. News reports indicated Diana had recovered physically and entered intensive psychiatric treatment. His parents remained silent, honoring their commitment to permanent separation. The story had reached its natural conclusion, not through forgiveness or reconciliation, but through consequences fully realized and a future built from their painful lessons. 1 year later, at the Institute's annual conference, Victor unveiled their most ambitious project yet, an international coalition of scientific, financial, legal, and protection agencies dedicated to creating unified responses to exploitation attempts. The greatest vulnerability exists in isolation, he told the assembled representatives. By connecting protection systems across disciplines and borders, we eliminate the gaps predators exploit. The coalition represented everything Walsh, Diana, and his parents had never anticipated when they launched their scheme against him. A global network of protection born directly from their attempt to victimize one person. As the conference concluded, Noah found Victor reviewing the coalition's implementation timeline. 7 years ago, when they came after you, could you have imagined this? Noah asked, gesturing around the Institute. Victor considered the question. No, but transforming personal injury into systemic protection gives meaning to an experience that would otherwise be merely painful. Without forgiveness, Noah noted. Without forgiveness, Victor confirmed. Some actions don't merit forgiveness. They merit consequences and containment. What matters is converting those consequences into protection for others. That evening, Victor and Lydia hosted a small dinner for the coalition's founding members at their home. As conversations flowed around scientific ethics and financial protection strategies, Victor realized he had achieved something his would-be destroyers could never comprehend: a legacy built not on vengeance, but on transformation. He had not forgiven those who betrayed him. He had not welcomed them back into his life, even as they faced their own downfalls. Instead, he had ensured their actions resulted in consequences proportionate to their betrayals, and then channeled that justice into a force for protection exponentially greater than the harm they had attempted. In the end, when his parents and their lawyer had shown up to court to have him declared legally unfit, their faces had indeed turned pale, not just at the evidence exposing their conspiracy, but the first glimpse of a resolution they could never have anticipated. A resolution that would ultimately protect countless others from similar fates, while ensuring that those who had betrayed him would face the consequences of their actions for the remainder of their lives. It wasn't forgiveness. It was justice, complete, proportionate,